Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Hind. Hi, Kweku. Thank you so much for joining me. I am very excited about this discussion we're going to have today. So it's a fire chat where we're going to be talking about embracing digitalization. And we know, especially because we're in the wake of the AFCFTA, if there's one thing that can help us bridge the gap and connect Africa, it is the digital. And if COVID has taught us something, is we cannot do anything without the digital. So it is really the future. So before we start digging into the conversation, I would love for you first to introduce yourself. Let's start with yourself and then we'll dig into your activities. Hind Benghanem, would you like to introduce a little bit yourself, please?
Okay, thank you very much, dear Chiraz. Thank you to give us this opportunity to present our activities and to present digital solution, which is vital. So sorry, I will speak in French because I'm more comfortable to speak in French. So, je suis donc Hind Benghanem. J'ai 3 entreprises en Algérie. Une qui est donc dans la communication et la publicité et l'impression numérique grand format. J'en ai une autre où nous sommes spécialisés dans le conseil S logistique. Et puis une troisième où nous avons donc développé des solutions digitales. Je vis en Algérie, je suis née en Algérie, grandi et étudiée en Algérie, à part quelques expériences un peu au Maroc et en Tunisie. Et je suis une grande amoureuse de l'Afrique.
Thank you so much. And I love when we get to meet serial entrepreneurs like yourself, strong women, 3 companies in Algeria, love of Africa. So thank you so much. Kweku, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Kweku Boadu is my name. I'm Director of Corporate Affairs at mPedigree. mPedigree is, I'm sure we'll get into it later, but we are basically a technology company, an African technology company that has been harnessing technologies for the past decade to aid governments and regulators around the world to fight counterfeiting, with an emphasis on medicinal counterfeiting. Beyond that, I'm also a consultant for tech policy and an activist as well.
Amazing. 2 amazing invitees that have multiple hats. So I am sure this conversation is going to be very interesting. And I actually want to start about, obviously, the role of digital. Right? How can digital tools help the African countries when it comes to their governance, to their decision making? How can they improve the development of key sectors? We talked about agriculture during this conference. We talked about investment, financing. So what role do you see digital and digital tools play? Let's start with you, Kweku.
Fantastic question, Chiraz. First of all, I think that I must point out that technology and digital platforms and tools currently play a much lesser role than they should. And the main reason is because within the entire public consciousness on the continent, I'm afraid to say, even amongst the elites, there isn't the acceptance that technology really is the way to go. I mean, we sat in at the conference earlier where we talked about a lot of problems in manufacturing and exporting and so on. And nobody really brought up the issue that, what these companies or SMEs need to do is to go digital. I mean, they spoke about, there was a concern that arose about how SMEs can access finance. And the concern was that mainstream commercial banks were not sensitive to the needs of SMEs. But one key concern is that of data. If you cannot show production and sales and cash flow, it becomes very difficult for a bank to, attend to your needs. And one key way to solve that is simply to use simple digital tools to log your entries, to log your sales, to show your cash flow, and so on. So currently, that is a big problem, that within the thinking consciousness of Africans, even within business and political elites, we don't see technology as the go-to source to solve our problems. And that has to change. We need to find ways of institutionalizing an acceptance of technology, because we can learn from other economies and what they have been able to accomplish with tech. And later on, I want to talk a bit about how we can solve that. Yeah. But that notwithstanding, there have been some very interesting breakthroughs. In fact, there have actually been some world firsts when it comes to technology in Africa. And I'll point to just 2 examples. The first one has been in regards to work that I have been proud to be connected to in about 12 countries in Africa, where we have been able to serialize medicines and allow people who buy those medicines to confirm that the medicines are genuine. So the whole world has been facing a daunting problem, medicinal counterfeiting, which means that people buy drugs expecting healing, but inadvertently they are putting toxins into their bodies and getting ripped off. And statistics from the United Nations have shown the proceeds from medicinal anti-counterfeiting, for instance, are linked to global terrorism and other illegal activities. So it's a really serious problem, estimated to, in the billions, several billions of dollars per annum. Now, what we have been able to do in Africa as a world first, and we need to take custody of our narratives and celebrate them, is that in a country like Nigeria, we've been able to serialize all anti-malarials. And everybody buying an anti-malarial can, with their phone, whether it's a smart one or a feature one, confirm the authenticity of that pack of medicine. This has not been done anywhere in the world before. Indeed, first-class countries that have attempted to solve this problem have used billions of dollars to solve it through complicated technologies such as the RFID and so on. Nigeria has been able to accomplish that using a fraction of the resources that Western countries have devoted. So that's one major achievement that we've seen on the continent of Africa in the area of health. The second one that I'll touch on is in the agricultural sector. So one key problem has been how to track produce, track seeds, ensure that farmers are getting the right seeds, because seeds are also being faked.
Yeah.
The farmers are getting the right seeds, and that we are not having a situation where in a few years we're going to be facing a major farming issue. And we've been able to serialize seeds in Kenya, for instance. Farmers can confirm that each planting seed they buy is genuine, and the government can have access to all the data of what seeds farmers are buying, and all that can feed into decision making and multi-level policy analysis and planning. So these are two areas in which Africa has distinguished itself globally when it comes to technology, in spite of the daunting challenges that remain.
Thank you so much. I love how you talked about this question of acceptance, accepting technology and integrating it fully to the problems that we have. And again, I love the example that you gave us, because it showed that first, when it comes to technology, we don't have to envy any solution around the world. We can, as African, really produce it. And why sometimes it might be cheaper to produce it here is because we do really know what are the problems. We know where are the bottlenecks. So to answer the problem, it comes to be easier. Hind, would you like to reflect on the question?
Of course. So, first, we have to understand what does it mean digital solution and what does it mean tools, digital tools. For exemple, je continue en français, excusez-moi. Donc, on a par exemple le marketing digital, nous avons les solutions digitales telles que les applications mobiles, les logiciels de gestion et autres. Maintenant, il y a des solutions digitales sur lesquelles moi je veux un peu plus m'étaler, qui sont pour le large public ou même pour les professionnels, qui vont nous offrir cette opportunité d'un peu sortir de la bureaucratie, d'avoir une certaine transparence, d'avoir la traçabilité de tout ce que nous traitons comme matériel, comme outil, comme information, mais surtout avoir l'information authentique, parce que celui qui détient l'information détient le pouvoir. Donc le digital va nous raccourcir tous les chemins pour l'accès à l'information, pour parfois l'accès à certaines administrations qui aujourd'hui, hélas, en Afrique, on se retrouve avec des tonnes et des tonnes de papiers pour parfois une inscription, pour parfois une demande de visa, une soumission à un appel d'offres. Et donc tout ça est aussi synonyme de gaspillage, c'est-à-dire que le digital, c'est au fait le zéro papier, le non-paper. Donc si nous parvenons déjà à optimiser en ce sens, gagner du temps, gaspiller moins, donc ça devient l'avenir d'un continent comme le nôtre, comme l'Afrique. Je pense que les solutions donc, digitales aujourd'hui ne sont plus un luxe, mais ça devient une nécessité. Nous sommes obligés de moderniser nos process si nous voulons justement avoir une économie saine, mais surtout si nous voulons rivaliser un peu ce qui se fait à l'Occident.
Perfect, thanks. I love, because both of you are so aligned, because again, digital solutions are now the norms. They have to be fully integrated. And as you said, both of you, it helps a lot with the question of transparency, access to data, really having the information so that we can, at the end of the day, bring up those technologies that will answer the problems that we have, answer the future challenges. It's not, and those challenges are not only for Africa, because some of them, although the solution is African, this can cater to needs and problematics that are international and for the whole world. So what role do you see digital tools and digital playing in the future, really? Hind, would you like to start?
Bah, écoutez, on ne va pas comme des surcoupes volantes, hein. C'est pas en même temps, c'est pas très futuriste, mais ce que nous voyons, c'est que de pouvoir rentrer dans les entreprises, parce qu'au fait, il faut comprendre que les pays ne sont pas que les capitales, parce qu'il faut savoir que l'Afrique, ce ne sont pas que les grandes villes. Il faut aussi aller à l'intérieur des pays où parfois certaines administrations n'ont même pas de computer, hein, si j'ai envie de parler un langage très archaïque. Ils n'ont pas de PC, ils n'ont même pas de smartphone. Donc le rôle d'entreprises comme les nôtres, par exemple, où nous devons initier tous les professionnels et même donc les personnes, les individus particuliers au digital, c'est de pouvoir instaurer des solutions très basiques, hein, mais vraiment très basiques, depuis nos smartphones, depuis nos PC, des logiciels. Donc voilà un peu, je pense, notre rôle, et donc d'essayer d'adapter des solutions qui existent déjà en Afrique, où nous sommes quand même très, très avancés, et élargir cela sur toute l'Afrique dans son immensité.
I love how you're saying, because sometimes when we talk about 2020 or 2022 nowadays, I'm sure a lot of us, when we thought about 2022, we were like, people are imagining like flying cars, like, really those crazy technologies. And at the end of the day, sometimes the innovation is really about answering the basic needs, having really basic solution. But this is the innovation that we really need. So it's, as you said, having access to the tools that facilitate the work, and rightly said, whatever, especially in Africa, but a country is not the big cities, it's also the remote part. They have to get access. So this is the connectivity part that we really need to talk to. Kweku, would you like to tell us a little bit also, Alan?
Yeah, absolutely. But before we can even begin to imagine the role of technology in Africa, I think that there are two prerequisites that we must satisfy. The first one is that we need to solve the issue of what African technology is or should be. By that I mean, we need indigenous ownership of the technologies that are being deployed in Africa. There are a few interesting companies that have done very well on the continent. Jumia, for instance, has been hailed as a success story at the e-commerce website. But you look very carefully and you see that, critical leadership of the company are not really African. Even I think their headquarters, if I'm not mistaken, was located elsewhere. So we need to solve this identity issue, that what is African technology and who owns the intellectual properties that underpin these technologies. Because if we do not do that, then it does not matter what system you deploy. You will be supplying digital raw materials to institutions and people elsewhere. And these digital raw materials really, if you want to be political, can serve neo-colonial intent, because data is power. The more people see our transactions, the more they understand our behavior, the more they can predict what we're going to do or say. And then the easier they can outcompete us. So the first thing we need to do is to solve this issue of Africans owning the technology, which is why I think yesterday the issue came up about the power system that's going to underpin the after, and the software that are going to run the system. Where is it coming from? Who owns them? The second issue I believe that we need to solve is to somehow learn from China. So somehow, some way, we all woke up and realized that China is producing everybody's products and making good money while at it. But that did not happen overnight. I mean, China has spent decades training their young people, first of all, longer in school. Some of the schools go as long as 10 to 12 hours per day. But also, more importantly, by policy, ensuring that the vast majority of their products graduate in scientific courses. That very easily creates a base, a human material base, for people who can think in engineering, scientific, computerized, and structural terms. Once we do that, we can unleash the creativities of our young people. Bear in mind that we are the youngest continent. The average African is 18 years. I think the average European is about 40 years. The average Asian is about 37 years. So we have a huge advantage. Our population is very young. And the exciting thing about technology is that it's one area that does not require huge capital investments to start. If you look at even the great success stories, whether it is that of Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, you will see that they all started from computers that their fathers or their mothers have bought for them at home. So Africa software really is one area in which a young gentleman in Algiers, sitting behind a computer with the power of imagination and some proper training in mathematics and science, can really conceive of a tremendous solution that will, over 3-4 years, as we have seen in the case of, say, Flutterwave, be valued at $3 billion. Governments really need to understand that the power on which we are sitting when it comes to technology is unrivaled. And there's too much focus on the core minerals, most of which we have lost because we have collateralized them and we are not looking enough at technology. So I think these two requirements need to be in place. Once that is done, I think we'll take off. I'll give you a few examples. I've already spoken about mPedigree and how we have revolutionized the whole idea of the whole approach to solving counterfeit medicines. I'll give you another example. There's a gentleman in Ethiopia who has built a glove. What that glove does is to enable deaf and dumb people to communicate. So when they do their sign language, which you and I cannot understand unless we've been trained, there's a voice mechanism that translates the sign language into speech. So when he does it, you can hear, "How are you?" And that's a young man sitting in Addis who conceived of this technology, a world first. I recently saw a story about young girls in a southern African country that had thought of a generator that was going to be powered by Eurl. These are heavily imaginative stuff. Now, there's a reason why these solutions, I believe, can only come from Africa. Because certain social circumstances give birth to certain outcomes. The cheapest car, another example, that was built in America, I think cost about $6,000 to $7,000. That's the cheapest, tiniest car you can have. Then a dude in China built the same thing for about $1,000. Now, you need to understand that certain social conditions affect thinking and then create a certain tendency to be frugal in your imagination. And then that makes you solve a problem in a way that somebody coming from a different social extraction could not have conceived of. Because of that, because Africans we're still the poorest by and large, because we are still the most beaten, we still carry a huge portion of the global disease burden, we will be able to think in ways that the rest of the world cannot. So if you're looking for really where the next big solutions to global problems are going to come from, whether it is climate change, whether it is equality, which even the West still grapples with, whether it is how we're going to take off to Mars or really become an interplanetary species, whether it is how we're going to conquer cancer, whether it's how we're going to double or triple our life expectancy so that we can live to be 150 or 200, I think you really should be looking to Africa. Because we have a unique set of young people who have gone through hardships and so can do much with very little. So I really believe that these two requirements, if we put them in place, ensure that about 60% of our products coming out of our universities are trained in the sciences and the computer sciences. And secondly, we ensure that we take ownership of the software, because it doesn't make sense to deploy any system that is not owned indigenously by people in Nigeria, people in Ghana, people in Cameroon. If that is not going to happen, then perhaps we are better off not even deploying.
I honestly loved first your passion for sure, but rightfully you said it, and that is so true. Usually it's when we are in the hardest or the harshest environment that we get so creative, or even ourselves, we realize that we can do things we never thought we could. And this applies even more for technology and talking about the solutions. But I couldn't agree more. Training in the right fields, this is so key when it comes to how we want to see the future of Africa. Exactly. We need to make sure that our youth and our population in general have access to the right tools like this. We give them the possibility to expand, to create, to open, and really create those solutions. And obviously we don't have so much time, so I wouldn't go deeper because we're talking about ownership, because there's such a problem right now when it comes to servers, and that's not just for Africa, right? It's like, who owns the data of the solutions, right? We have all smartphones right now, we're all using WhatsApp and the like. Where is our data stored? So we will need to, but okay, I might not go into that today, but I would love though to ask the both of you, because what are the challenges you see today in Africa? We talked about training, obviously, among others in the startup, but what are the challenges you see today in Africa so that we can adopt better digital solution better and faster? You mentioned it also in your introduction. What can we do about it? Any advice or any, maybe if authorities are watching us, what would you like to tell them?
Okay. The first challenge. D'abord, c'est changer les mentalités. Pourquoi? Parce que le digital, et notamment en Afrique, c'est de savoir si la personne, l'individu, a accès au moindre outil, à savoir le smartphone. Tout le monde n'a pas accès à un smartphone en Afrique. Il ne faut pas se voiler la vérité. Il est parfois inaccessible en termes de pouvoir d'achat. Donc ça, c'est vraiment un challenge pour nous si nous voulons généraliser nos solutions, notamment celles qui sont destinées au grand public. Le deuxième challenge, c'est aussi changer les mentalités des professionnels qui doivent se servir de nos solutions. Nous avons des solutions dédiées aux chefs d'entreprise, des solutions digitales, où ils peuvent réduire leurs coûts de manière considérable. Mais ils ont justement cette peur d'investir pour ce type donc, de solution. Quand bien même on leur explique pour 1 plus 1 égale à 2, ça reste quand même très difficile. Ils restent très, comment dirais-je, ils appréhendent le choix de la solution digitale. Pourquoi? Parce qu'ils sont habitués à la feuille et au stylo. Ils sont habitués aux méthodes archaïques dans lesquelles ils se sentent très à l'aise. Donc, leur ramener des solutions digitales, c'est les sortir au fait de leur zone de confort. Et ça, c'est vraiment un très grand challenge. Un autre challenge, d'ailleurs, c'est un problème que je vis aujourd'hui en Algérie, hélas, c'est au fait la ressource humaine. Certaines années en arrière, nous avions la fuite des cerveaux des médecins, des chercheurs, des physiciens, des mathématiciens. Aujourd'hui, nous avons la fuite des serveurs des informaticiens, la fuite des cerveaux, pardon, des informaticiens, des développeurs d'applications web et mobiles, des techniciens. Pourquoi? Parce que, hélas, en Occident, ces gens-là, on leur offre de meilleures conditions de travail, de meilleures prises en charge de leur, j'irais même jusqu'à dire de leur vie privée, c'est-à-dire ces gens-là sont pris en charge avec leur famille. Donc, un Africain, c'est clair, à choisir entre l'Afrique et ce que propose l'Europe, ce que propose Dubaï ou même les États-Unis, il est clair qu'il va aller vers ce marché de l'emploi qui est bien plus intéressant que le nôtre. Donc, moi, à mon avis, il va falloir que les gouvernements se concentrent sur cette catégorie RH pour les maintenir dans nos pays. Ils doivent trouver une stratégie pour pouvoir séduire ces jeunes personnes qui sont jeunes. C'est vrai qu'ils ont envie de vivre, qu'ils ont envie de voyager, qu'ils ont envie d'avoir une vie décente. Chose que l'Européen, l'Occidental propose, que nos pays africains, hélas, ne peuvent pas offrir. Donc, on se retrouve à acheter des solutions digitales de l'Occident, mais fabriquées par une RH africaine. Et ça nous fend le cœur de savoir qu'à Dubaï, par exemple, ou même aller en Allemagne, même pour quand on parlait d'hébergement, etc., ce sont des techniciens de chez nous. Ce sont des enfants de nos écoles, des gens qui ont été donc instruits et qui ont étudié donc, ou en Algérie ou ailleurs, donc partout en Afrique, qui partent travailler. Donc, et on est appelé à acheter ces solutions donc, faites par ces jeunes-là. Donc voilà un peu le challenge aujourd'hui. Mais bien évidemment, donc, le gouvernement doit instaurer une réglementation qui oblige toutes les institutions publiques, étatiques, des administrations à intégrer les solutions digitales parce qu'ils doivent donner l'exemple. Et bien évidemment, obliger d'autres entreprises à faire autant. Vous savez, il y a certains pays américains où pour l'ouverture d'un registre de commerce, si vous n'avez pas un portail web, si vous n'avez pas donc une vitrine web, un site web, vous n'avez pas le droit au registre. Que chez nous en Afrique, la majorité donc, des entreprises, notamment privées, n'ont pas de site web. Et c'est une façon de cacher un peu leur savoir-faire, parce qu'en fait, un site web, c'est aussi beaucoup de communication, beaucoup de publicité. Donc, le gouvernement joue un rôle extrêmement important dans l'intégration des solutions digitales, que ce soit dans les entreprises publiques ou même privées. Voilà.
Perfect, thanks. I think we've talked about it a lot during the conference about the mindset, making sure that first we deal with this management of change. Obviously today we're talking, this is something in any case whenever there is a change, whichever sector, this is such a big deal, but even more when you're trying to show people to do things differently using new tools. And some people, my dad is 85, so when I show him a smart, he's like, I don't want to handle that. So you can imagine that at some point, some people, they've been working for 50 years the same way, and you're telling him, here's a new tool. He might not be free, so for sure, I completely agree, this is something to work on. And the second one, as you said, is really having the government showing the way, leading the way in that example, having the right regulation to make sure that those solutions are integrated and that digital tools are integrated and have to be integrated in administrative public authorities, in the private sector. And to go back to what you were talking about, human resources and what you just said, indeed, as Africa, we have amazing human resources, amazing talents. However, we need to make sure that we don't have any more this brain drain, but we give them the right platform so that they can really roar and really be those leaders that they can, and if not, have the diaspora come back and see that actually what they are doing in Europe, in Dubai, in the US, like you were showing, this is something that they can do here so that we don't feel, as you said, this little hurtfulness that you would have somebody from Ghana or Algeria sitting in Germany building this technology and then us Africans buying it back.
Buying them.
Would you like to compliment?
Absolutely. I think I have to completely agree with Hind on the points that she made. I think the major hindrance will be behavior modification.
Yes.
And, I want to quickly look at it on 3 levels. First of all, on the leadership level, political leadership level. Secondly, on the business leadership level. And then finally, on the consumer, if you like, general public level. At the political level, so my work leads me to interface a lot with key government officials, and oftentimes I get the impression in these board rooms and in these discussions that the vast, so here's another discordant set of data. Whilst we have the youngest population, we'd appreciate that we have by far the oldest leaders. And there's this discordance in their ability to appreciate what technology is.
Yeah.
And so ordinarily when there's a problem, the technology is seen as something on some computer somewhere. Yeah, we may do it, but later. For now, let us see how we can physically solve the problem.
Yeah.
And that has to change. I'm not exactly sure how we can effect the change on the political elite level, but somehow, some way, we're going to have to get our ministers and heads of states meeting at the AU or wherever to really appreciate that tech has to be the first option, the first go-to option.
Yeah.
Because when you're solving problems of digital tools, whether it's identifying people, whether it is taxation, whether it is deploying social systems, tech tends to be able to do those things far cheaper than manual systems can do. So we need the behavior modification at that level. But on the business side, I think we also need to innovate. Here's a very good example. If you look at the congressional settings that invited Mark Zuckerberg recently, and years ago Bill Gates, to come and testify, you would see that here was a system, the United States government system, very efficient and elaborate, but somehow, some way, an individual had gone ahead and out-innovated it, had built technologies and systems that were far ahead of it, and you could see the government struggling to catch up. I think we need to do that with the systems in Africa. We spend too much time complaining about the political systems.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like they're going to change by tomorrow. It's going to take some time, hopefully. But in the meantime, we should be able to build systems that can render political decisions that are bad ineffective.
Yeah.
So Mark Zuckerberg didn't need the permission of the US government to build a system that was so powerful that it could predict human behavior to the extent that the government had to come and have a conversation with him. We need to think of doing that with business and with the kind of solutions that we build, especially those of us that are in tech and that are in the digital space.
Yeah.
We do our work very well. We are going to be able to take it to the next level, which is to be able to induce business-led legislation. So if we build our institutions and we deliver services and build value, we can be able to go to the political system and say, put in these laws to facilitate these things for the people. So at the business level, I think this is the sort of modification, behavioral modification we need to see in our own mindsets, that we should stop seeing the borders. One way is to get all the presidents to agree to remove the borders at least significantly so we can move freely. But another way might be to build tools that can render the borders redundant.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a popular app in West Africa, that allows people to buy things all the way from China.
Mm-hmm.
And the goods get delivered between 1 to 2 weeks. That's amazing. So some Chinese dude sat down and decided that, look, forget about the African systems. I'm going to build a superior logistical system and connect all of that into a mobile phone so that a young lady sitting in a building in Accra can buy a nice dress like what Chiraz is wearing and have it delivered in 2 weeks. That makes nonsense of all your immigration rules. It makes nonsense of all your financial barriers and so on and so forth. So if those of us in business, those of us that have the opportunities to come to places like this, to have these sort of interactions, we need to modify our thinking in that regard. The final one I think is very interesting, which is how we're going to be able to modify the behavior of consumers to align with all these changes that we need to see. Now here's an allegation. On a podcast, a popular podcast show in the United States, it was alleged that TikTok, we are familiar with TikTok, that there's a covert mission to use TikTok to dump down other populations. And you know, and
I read that.
you read that. And the point is that, of course, we can verify, but I think we can learn from it. The point is that if you are in Lagos and you know, go onto TikTok as, you know, a invention, you're more likely to see a young girl that has put something together, something entrepreneurial, something that will spare thinking. And the strategic, you know, the strategic warfare implicit in that whole scenario is that whilst the young people in Lagos are watching videos and dancing and laughing, and you know, every now and then there's a new tune and everybody goes to do a video, you know, whilst we are busy doing that, well, the young people elsewhere are seeing things that are making them think, maybe I can do this too. And that is a truly powerful way of modifying the behavior of your people and sort of like trying to push them without forcing them, without guns, through democratic means, but still mobilizing them in the industrial direction in which you want them to go. So we need to do that. We need to find ways of defeating the algorithms and the bots that allow us, anytime I go on TikTok, I have to see somebody dancing or somebody eating, and you know, somebody doing something funny, which is nice, but you don't need to see that 9 out of 10 times. You need to see that perhaps 1 out of 20. For the most part, we need to see people like Hind and the amazing work that they are doing. We need girls in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Togo to listen to her and to hear what she has accomplished with her life and to feel inspired. So on the consumer/public level, this is the sort of modification we need to see. And thankfully, we can do these things with digital tools. And now that I'm thinking about it, if we align the consumers and the people, if we get the public to think in a certain way, and business leaders, not political leaders, but business leaders are then willing to feed into it, the political leadership will become redundant.
For sure. You know what I love what you're saying is that when we're talking about mindset and changing, it is at the end realizing that we shouldn't be passive and taking the action. We don't have to wait for the regulation to arrive to actually create those technologies that we want or those solutions. We have to some extent, really be bold and doing it, because at the end we want to show them that it is possible, that we can do it, that we've done it. Now, however, it cannot go all the way around. We need a regulation to make sure that it goes the right way. Absolutely. Or also the standards, so we make sure that we abide by it. But we shouldn't wait and see. We should, I always like say it, and I'm sorry if I offend somebody, Africans to stop playing the victim game and the blame game. And it's not, we have to take ownership of what we can do and want to do. We have to stop relying on the outside world, on the outside financing or the outside resources. We have everything we can in Africa. We just have to realize that we can just do it. And it is those platforms, and like we're doing today, to showcase as you said, these people that have done it. Obviously it's not perfect, there are challenges, we're not saying life is amazing, but showing that it's possible. So we inspire, we shed the light to these things so that we can really move forward. Absolutely. I'm gonna ask one last question that I want to link it to your businesses, and then we have a couple of questions or not, but we're talking about the AFCFTA, and one thing that is completely true is, please find me a border with digital. It's very hard to know what are the borders. But what do you think should be done even more to have digital play a major role and to be key, therefore, in the economic integration within the AFCFTA? And both of you are technology companies, and you have created those solutions. So what can digital play, and what are maybe your tools?
Ok, d'abord, il faut faire beaucoup de campagnes de sensibilisation dédiées au grand public, aux professionnels et au gouvernement à l'importance de la solution digitale. Aujourd'hui, j'ai envie d'être prétentieuse et de dire que j'ai la chance de venir de l'Algérie. Pourquoi? Parce que le gouvernement algérien a pris conscience qu'il faut aujourd'hui justement donner la chance à de jeunes personnes qui développent des solutions, et c'est des génies. Aujourd'hui, nous avons un ministère qui est dédié donc aux startups. Nous avons des levées de fonds pour aider ces jeunes gens pour justement développer leurs idées et devenir de grands projets. Nous avons beaucoup d'incubateurs au niveau des universités, des incubateurs privés, des accélérateurs pour accompagner ces jeunes porteurs de projets. beaucoup de compétitions, des compétitions qui partent aussi à l'international où des lauréats algériens sont revenus avec des félicitations, que ce soit de Dubaï, avec des premiers prix, etc. Donc je pense que l'Afrique doit copier un peu ce modèle algérien qui commence à donner ses fruits aujourd'hui. Et comme tu l'as dit, Chiraz, il faut oser. Il faut oser. Il ne faut pas attendre que le gouvernement... Moi, j'ai développé des solutions digitales. Personne ne m'a aidé. J'ai osé. J'ai travaillé pendant 3 années pour développer ces outils. Aujourd'hui, ils sont sur le marché. Et j'ai même envie de un peu exporter cette solution et l'adapter sur le marché africain. Donc, il faut oser. Il ne faut pas attendre que à plus haut niveau on vous aide parce que rien ne... moi, je suis pour la méritocratie, pour que les choses se méritent. Et donc, faire beaucoup de campagnes de sensibilisation à l'utilisation des solutions digitales, de l'outil digital, de tout ce qui peut nous faciliter au fait la vie au quotidien. Mais aussi, je pense que là c'est à plus haut niveau, il va falloir pousser les banques à suivre parce que on peut citer l'exemple, durant notre voyage, tout a été parfait, tout a été bien organisé, mais dès qu'il s'agit de paiement, de e-payment, de banque, de change, de devise, ça bloque. Donc je pense qu'on ne peut pas épouser des solutions modernes, on ne peut pas les adopter si les modes et modalités de paiement ne suivent pas. Donc moi je pense que les banques doivent un peu, aux banques maintenant de s'adapter un peu à nos besoins pour pouvoir mettre des solutions solides et surtout efficaces et surtout applicables, pas par pays mais à un niveau continental. Pourquoi? Parce que ces solutions, si elles réussissent en Afrique, sachez que nous devons aller au-delà donc des frontières africaines. Nous n'avons rien à envier à ce qui se fait en Europe, aux États-Unis. Nos solutions sont très bien exportables dans des pays les plus modernes. Et pour cela, il va falloir attaquer près du. Voilà.
And yes, it goes back to actually what we were saying, like really bringing this this awareness, like of this importance of utilizing the digital technology. And I love how you gave the example of Algeria. And funnily enough, so in Algeria, we do have, as you said, the startup and knowledge economy ministry, but we see a lot of entrepreneurship and startup ministries coming up now more and more in Africa, because nowadays it has been shown, and we see that the youth is the drive. We have to give them the opportunities to grow. And yes, Algeria is an example. There are some other examples, but we have to inspire what have worked. And like you rightly said, the solutions that are built today in Africa have to be exportable. And they have to think like this. For sure, we will go national, regional, continental, and then beyond there is no limit. We do not wait up on government. You gave your example. You didn't have to wait up for the government. But again, we need also, besides the authorities, the banks, and as in, why not having them adapt to us, adapting to the realities, because African banks had given the example of their new solution, but yes, it has to really adapt to the needs today of the digital technologies and how it works. Would you like then, Shadow, please, on this last question?
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, I would like to start from basics because of a statistic that I saw down there that scared me, that suggested that a majority, I think it said about 52% of business leaders don't know what after is. So, from scratch, what is after? And if business people that are supposed to be the targets, the majority of them do not know what it is, how much more ordinary young people? So, for me, that's the first issue. And we can solve this using digital tools. We could have tons and tons of videos discussing after in simple terms and how it connects to specific businesses. So are you into manufacturing? That's what after means. Are you into cosmetics? That's what after means. Are you into imports? That's what after means. These are the specific ways in which it can affect your taxation, it can affect your revenue, it can affect your sales. So you can have a platform. Look at the amazing thing that TED has accomplished. A platform that collects videos of ideas. And if you're doing a research, you can go there and find incredible resource material from some of the world's most renowned experts in that field. So I can sit in Accra, I can go back, tell somebody in my office, have you heard of AFTA? Go to this website and see. And they can learn by watching really well curated videos that speak to the essence of AFTA and how it connects to the African experience. The second thing for me is that we need to do some of the easiest things first. We all have to travel, all the way here to Gaborone, Botswana, beautiful country, by the way. But we have to struggle a little bit. And, with visa processing and things like that. And let's be frank. I mean, from Algeria to Botswana, you obviously should be able to get your visa online. I mean, come on. Let's be honest. It should be possible to go onto a platform and apply yourself to the requirements there rigorously, have somebody assess it. And then there are low-hanging fruits. There are very easy, simple things that we can do. Some of the things are difficult, but there are also very simple things. And sometimes it's baffling why we are not doing them. So, in the spirit of AFTA and talking about digital platforms, we should be able to use that to solve some of the small issues, some of the low-hanging fruits, such as getting a visa. There's no reason why an Algerian national, a Ghanaian national, a Nigerian national wanting to come to Botswana to come and have a meeting or conduct business should not be able to go on the Botswana, the dedicated portal, input the relevant material, and then get their visa. There's no reason why that shouldn't happen. My final thing is that to enable digitalization to facilitate the whole after drive, we need to share ideas. And we have learned that there are dedicated websites for chamber, for the commerce chambers, and for there's a trade directory. But I don't think we have yet a platform dedicated to sharing blueprints. There are problems that have been solved in Algeria that the Ghana government may be battling with. They don't have to start from scratch. It should be possible within the African Union's infrastructure to share these ideas. So we need businesses that have solved certain problems, sharing these ideas with other businesses that want to, go into those spaces. We need governments that have solved one big problem in my country now currently is taxation, electronic taxation. And the government is struggling with it, and it's massively unpopular. The people are pushing back. But there are other countries that have solved that problem already. We really don't have to all the time have to invent the wheel from scratch when our neighbors have solved some of these problems already. So these three ways, I believe, will help facilitate the whole after drive from a digital perspective.
As a funny story, because that there is a platform to apply for the visa in Botswana.
Okay.
So you do. However, there's still a human person that actually applies, and it doesn't take 24 hours, unfortunately. But I love what you said. Indeed, like both of you said, it's really about, at the end of the day, sharing. And you know how much I'm all about sharing experiences. So I cannot reinforce that anymore. And interestingly enough, there is a young Ghanaian, if I'm not mistaken, who created a documentary on AFTA, actually explaining what it is. It's called The Rise. Sorry, I'm promoting somebody that is not even here, but because you were talking about it, because that is so true.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about the AFCFTA, and we talk about it and we throw the word, but some people don't really know what it really means. And I think it also because to a certain extent, on an African level, even ministries, apologies if they get offended, don't know also what is really going to mean on a daily basis. They know what is the vision, but how are we really going to implement it? And I think this is why it's been 2 years where we're still kind of figuring out. Thank you so much to